everyone. This is Follow the Money, brought to you by United Bank for Africa, in partnership with UBA, one of Nigeria's largest banks. Yes, I hope you've had a very great week. I know that it was a very tough week for a lot of people. This time last week, there were queues everywhere and, people trying to get fuel in their car and get by, not just in Lagos, around the country. But I think we've started off Monday a little better than last week. I was like driving around, and I think over the weekend, and I saw that the few queues are sort of disappearing. I hope that they completely disappear. We can't be paying all that money, 1K, 900, 800 in some filling stations, and still be suffering in queues. Anyway, that kind of affected the market, and today is going to be a bumper day. I got a lot of stuff to talk about today on the show, so strap that seatbelt and let's move on. By the way, this is Follow the Money. If you're just listening for the first time, we do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30 on this station, and of course, you can catch this particular episode and prior episodes on any of your podcast platforms, the favorite podcast platforms that you like to stream from, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcast, or even on Google. We're also on YouTube, by the way. If you go to our YouTube page now, just search for Nairametrics Follow the Money, and you'd see me right there in studio, reading this out. All right, so busy week for the stock market. And the all-share index, of course, closed the week of September with another decline. I think the market was also reacting to how, Nigeria was the whole of last week. Things were a little tough for a lot of people with all the stress. And so the market fell 0.15% as the bears took over. So market volume also dropped significantly with just 2.1 billion shares traded compared to 10 billion shares the previous week. So pretty tough for the market. And then out of the 5 trading days, only Monday and Friday did we record anything close to a positive close. The bulls only surfaced for 2 days in a week. The remaining 3 days was just all negative as, stocks all fell. Interesting thing is that people often blame some of these things to maybe the bank recapitalization, but that's not what we saw, at least from our reading of what happened in the stock market last week. And most indexes also fell. The premium index, which is the index that has the most capitalized companies, fell 0.37% in the first week of September, driven largely by what we call the SWOOTs at Nairametrics. So SWOOTs essentially is the stocks worth over 1 trillion naira. Yeah, they are stocks worth over 1 trillion. They're not more than like 8 or 9 of them. And those stocks basically just take over maybe over 30% or so of the entire stock market in terms of value, right? These are like Nigeria's largest companies quoted on the exchange. And so they also sort of shed positions during the week. Zenith Bank ended in red. Oando also shed positions. That has been like one of the best performing stocks so far this year, but they did pull back a bit. The NGX 30 and the main board also fell. NGX 30 is now 30 stocks, 30 of the most capitalized stocks on the exchange, like a premium exchange. So if you're looking for maybe stocks you want to buy, you tend to always look at the NGX Premium exchange, NGX Premium, yeah. So they also fell last week. Of course, the main board fell. I mentioned that already. However, the NGX Oil and Gas Index did outperform. Yep, did outperform last week, doing pretty well, and closed in green, 1.52% gain. But others all fell. Insurance Index fell, Consumer Goods Index fell, Industrial Goods Index fell, and the banking index fell as well. And in total, 46 stocks depreciated in price, while 69 remained unchanged. So pretty red week for the market. And of course, on the gainers table last week, the top stock last week was IMB, that's Industrial and Medical Basis. I don't know what's going on. It's a penny stock, so not a lot of people know what's happening with that stock or with that company, but it's a company in the medical field, and they gained 32% last week, and they've been gaining for some weeks now, so I don't know what's happening there. Gained 32% last week. Berger Paints also gained 31% last week, and then eTransact gained 20.5% last week, running up the top 3. Of course, UACN also gained 19% last week, and then CNI Leasing gained 18.7%. There's an article on CNI releasing. You might want to check it out this morning on Nairametrics, trying to explain how their results, I think I kind of mentioned the result last week, beat estimates. And there's a breakdown of that on Nairametrics. Of course, we also got losers. On the losers end, we had RT Briscoe leading that losers end. It used to be one of the best performing stocks, but fell by a whopping 27% last week. FTN Cocoa, that is one ghost company. I don't know what's going on there. Ghost in terms of information. We don't get a lot of information from them, but they were on the losers table, same as Omatech Venture, 2 penny stocks on the losers table. The only significant stock on the losers table that I see here was PZ. PZ did drop 9%. Last week. Of course, their result was pretty bloody, and so no surprises there. There were some important announcements during the week, in case you may have missed it. International breweries had some AGM resolutions released. Oando also issued out a warning to those people that are beefing against their results and their share price performances and all those, in quote, libelous claims that has been going around the media about how they were able to acquire Ajib's oil and gas assets and who is behind it and who owns it. There's just so many rumors out there, and they've come out to say, look, those rumors are not true. I mean, the company is not owned by anybody else except from the shareholders that are listed on their annual report. So that's what they're saying. So be careful out there what you say about Oando. Of course, Stanbic IBTC did release their Q2 result, another blistering performance. I will speak to that as we go on the show. And of course, Notoro Chemical Industries also announced some resignations and appointment of commissary. So that basically has been the stock market last week. Pretty red week, pretty red. We're hoping that this week will be a lot better. But of course, whenever there's a downtime, there's always upside. And if you now switch to global markets, particularly the US stock market, and I think a lot of us should pay attention to the US stock market. I do have some stocks in the US market, and it's important that you have portfolios that are diverse. So don't just invest only in the Nigerian stock exchange. You got to own some stocks in the US as well, because I mean, we're in an economy where the exchange rate is like as if it's always depreciating. So you want to have some positions in foreign stocks so that at least that is some kind of hedge for you. It's good to have diversified portfolio, and there are apps these days that you can use to invest in foreign stocks with as little as $500. You can actually, buy Apple or buy Facebook, or I think they're called Meta now, or even buy Alphabet, which is the owners of Google. You can buy all these very popular stocks, Microsoft, Snapchat, all of them. You can buy them just on your phone. All you need to do is just put some money in there, and then you can go ahead and buy this stock. So so I'm going to speak a bit to them at some point. The cost of the show this month, maybe not today. I think next week I'll probably zero in on some foreign stocks. Now the reason why I want to zero in is that I think there's an opportunity looming. Foreign stocks all had a beating last week because I think there's some correction going on there. There's fear that the US might be, experiencing lower GDP growth rate. Some are even speculating that it might be a recession. There's fear that stocks have been all-time high, so it's probably time for them to pull back. And when that happens, there's always opportunity. So a lot of stocks all fell. They all fell last week, and prognosis is that the fall might continue this week. I've seen a lot of readings out there, a lot of articles trying to explain, this barometer has happened or something has happened. They've gotten this trigger warning, so there's going to be a sell-off. It's been happening for some weeks now, but we really haven't seen that massive sell-off yet. So in case it does happen, then that will be an opportunity, of course, for us. All right, so still a lot to talk about on this show. We're going to talk about treasury bills, and then we'll go into Oando, and then we'll talk about Stanbic's results. I did mention that. And then we're going to talk about FBN Quest, something popping in FBN Quest. Used to be a subsidiary of FBN Holdings, known as a First Bank. And of course, then we're going to talk about the best performing pension funds in Nigeria for the month of July. Very important that you track your pension funds and how they are performing. And there are good websites out there that you can use to track some of these things. This one particular one, it's called Money Counselors. Nairametrics partners with them, so you might want to check them out. They're very good at tracking pension funds performances, and we do report some of their analysis on nairametrics. All right, so we go into treasury bills. So did you buy treasury bills last week? In case you didn't know, treasury bills were sold last week, by the way. I know. I mean, the gist is that if you don't have 50 million and above, you can't actually buy treasury bills in the primary market. However, if you have less than that, you can actually buy it in the secondary market. That's you buy it off the bank, right? And I think that is important that we take positions in treasury bills. I've said it before. You don't get any other risk-free asset with those sort of returns, and I don't see it happening again. In fact, the returns is even going down, so I don't see how we're going to be able to, enjoy, if I can use that word, this sort of returns in another maybe 5 years or 10 years. I mean, the economy has to be worse than it is again before you see treasury bills at this sort of elevated level. So if you have risk cash that maybe you don't have any use for at the moment, I mean, treasury bills is a good investment. Imagine if you had like maybe 100 million and you want to invest in treasury bills. They're going to give you like 25 million, and maybe you need that 25 million for a trip next year, all right, a holiday next year. And they just give you that 25 million upfront. You get it upfront. And then when you get that 25 million upfront, and then you can now invest in maybe a USD asset, USD yielding asset, right? So you can see like you can just make that money work for you and invest in a USD asset, and then that asset now becomes what you use for maybe your vacation next year or your school fees or whatever it is you want to use it for. So rather than just keeping that money lying fallow in the bank, right? So you can do that. Of course, you can do that you can buy your treasury bills through UBA, yes. Of course, that's one of the banks that you can buy your treasury bills through. You can usually buy through banks. And so if you're a customer of UBA, partners on nairametrics, by the way, so you can, of course, use them as well to buy your treasury bill. So last week, the CBN offered a total of 233.7 billion naira in treasury bills across all the tenors. So you have the 91-day tenor, you have the 182-day tenor, and you have the 364-day tenor. And so subscription again was overwhelming, 1 trillion. So again, there's a lot of cash out there because people don't tend to believe that there's cash. There's cash out there, 1 trillion again just last week. And it's been like this every month. So over 1 trillion, in fact, up to 2 trillion being used to purchase treasury bills. Somebody will say some of the cash is recycled because sometimes they also liquidate and then they take it back again. Anyway, but 1 trillion for treasury bills. 91-day bills were oversubscribed by more than double. That means people don't even care because typically 91-day bills are the least subscribed. People tend to prefer the 1-year bill so that you can lock in that interest rate. But the 91-day bill was oversubscribed by more than double with offer size of 19 billion and total subscription of 41 billion. So people were ready to put a lot of money in short term, 91 days. But the CBN only allotted 7 billion of that amount. Interesting. And of course, for the 182-day bill, the CBN offered 10.5 billion and of course drew subscription of 17.9 billion, and then they only allotted 1.9 billion. Wow. But the 364-day bills, that's the one that, I mean, CBN would typically prefer because that's a longer dated bill and the money there is a lot more. So offer size was 203 billion, saw the heaviest subscription of 1 trillion. Did you see that? So they only offered 200 billion, but there was 1 trillion on the table waiting to buy that treasury bills, and they only allotted 223 billion for that auction. So what were the rates? The interest rates for the 91-day bill was 17%, right? So 17% per annum, by the way, so it's not for 3 months per annum. So just do 17% times the amount that they are giving you and then divide it by 4. So that's basically 91-day bill, or times 91 over 364 days. And it gives you an idea of how much interest rate you're going to be getting. But of course, because you're getting that interest rate upfront, that 17% probably translates to maybe 20, 21% or thereabout in terms of true yield. And so, but it was lower than that 17% was lower than the 18% on the previous sale. So you can see that it's going down. Now, why is it going down? It's going down also because there's just so much cash out there waiting to buy the treasury bills, and demand and supply plays. So because there's so much cash, the central bank can often lower the rates to accommodate as many subscriptions as they want to take. So the 182-day bill, which was essentially 6 months, was 17.5%, down from 19.2%. So you can see treasury bills rates yields are now going down, and kind of suggests maybe perhaps we could see the central bank, when they meet later this month, maybe reduce MPR, which I doubt would happen, but who knows? Maybe because the way yields are going, they seem to be all the way down. And of course, the 360 4-day bill, which is the highest bill, closed at 18.9%. I told you guys, so the interest rate for treasury bills is now going down. It's no longer at the elevated levels that it was. So pretty likely that we're going to see yields continue to go down. So if you missed out on the, on the bazaar that was a few weeks ago when they were going for like 24, 23%, and through yield was even hitting like 29%, oh well, we're on our way down. So, but treasury bills is now 18.9% for 1 year. That's what the central bank is giving. So essentially, if you give them 100 million, they give you 18.9 million. Let's just say, yeah, they give you 18.9 million naira, and then you can invest that in anything you want. And that's what the central bank is doing at the moment. So for those who want to invest in treasury bills, if you put in 10 million, you get 1.89 million. And no, that's how you calculate that. All right, so we're going to quickly go into Oando, and then we'll take a break for a bit. So Oando, we all know, has been in the news for a bit, and they hit a put a milestone last week, and they hit the 1 trillion market cap. Incredible stuff. This was a stock that wasn't even worth 100 billion early in the year, but now it's worth 1 trillion because, of course, the acquisition of Nigeria's Ajib oil company. So you can't be worth less than 100 billion when you acquire, when you splurge over $700 million on a company. I mean, think about it. It doesn't work. So the share price would always have to appreciate, right, to sort of meet that capitalization. And that is where they are now. So they are now officially a swoot company, stock worth over 1 trillion. And so for those who are maybe surprised and wondering why is Oando's market cap that high, I kind of think that, yes, in terms of maybe the current fundamentals, it might not reflect that valuation. But if you acquire a company that big with that size, I think that, by the time you consolidate that company into your balance sheet, you're obviously going to be around this level. So no surprises that Oando's market capitalization is now 1 trillion, making it one of the largest oil and gas companies quoted on the Nigerian exchange, second only to Seplat. Seplat is over 1 trillion and has been like that for a bit. So no surprises for Oando there. But we're going to be tracking how they're able to sustain those numbers in a bit. So we're going to go on a bit of a short break. And when I'm back, we're going to discuss Stanbic IBTC, FBN Quest, and of course, the best performing pension funds in the country for the month of July. Be right back. The money brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with United Bank for Africa, UBA, one of Nigeria's best banks. All right, so we do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30, by the way. So if this is purely market show where we talk about the stock market locally or internationally. And we have discussed treasury bills and a number of things. And so the second half of the show, we're going to talk about Stanbic IBTC. One of Nigeria's major banks as well. They did release their second quarter numbers last week, and pretty impressive stuff. Profit rose 80% to 84 billion in the quarter, and that's quarter between April and June. So they did 84 billion and is the highest ever quarterly profit that this company has recorded, at least from our own perspective, from the numbers that we've seen over the years. We've never seen Stanbic IBTC do anything this good in terms of quarterly profit. So they smashed 84 billion naira in the quarter. And of course, half-year pre-tax profit, that's where you now look at the entire first half of the year, 147 billion, higher than 82 billion the same period last year. So put it into context, Stanbic IBTC did 82 billion or 82.9 billion the first half of last year. And this quarter alone, right, the quarter just ended, they did for 84 billion. So they basically beat last year's, what they've done in 3 months this year is better than what they did the first half of last year. And that kind of suggests that their numbers are going to be very solid come the end of the year. So Stanbic currently doing well. And just to go into the numbers, net interest income was also up 168% to 97 billion. Operating income up 66% to 145.7 billion. And of course, operating expenses also increased 50%. So of course, slightly higher than inflation. Not slightly higher, quite higher than inflation at 61 billion. Nevertheless, they still hit pre-tax profit of 84 billion. So the current result was driven by a surge in interest income and from customers, and of course, interest from investments, with a little bit of FX gains also somewhere in there. But solid numbers for Stanbic IBTC, and they also declared dividend of 1 naira per share, if I'm not mistaken, to their shareholders. So they put the money where their mouth is. It's not just telling you about the profit. They also declared dividend. So good stuff for shareholders of Stanbic IBTC. Nevertheless, despite all this, the share price did not fall into the top 10 in terms of best performing stocks during the week, but the numbers were solid. That's all that we need to know for now. And of course, also in the news last week was FBN Quest. So FBN Quest is a subsidiary of FBN Holdings, and I think what has been happening over the last few years is FBN Holdings, I think, is trying to reconsolidate their business and trying to restructure their business and focus on areas where they think they have competitive advantage. I was actually surprised that they were going to sell FBN Quest Merchant Bank, not like different FBN Quest. This one's FBN Quest Merchant Bank, and so they announced the 100% the sale of 100% equity in that wholly owned subsidiary to a company called EverQuest Acquisition LLP. So EverQuest Acquisition LLP is a consortium, from what I gather. It's a consortium of other companies that came to acquire FBN Quest Merchant Bank. And so the deal numbers were not very clear. Oh, by the way, the consortium, because someone said I should mention the people in the consortium. So the consortium comprises of Custodian Investment, and that is obviously a popular insurance company, Aon Investment, and Evercorp Industries, where was selected as the preferred bidders after a competitive bid process. So I think those are essentially the companies who own this company. So yes, that is one of the major news that we got last week. So interesting that this deal has been done, and going to see what will happen to FBN Merchant Bank as they now morph into a new entity or new ownership. Very likely that they are going to be competing as a merchant bank. Pretty interesting to see what Custodian Investment has been doing with some of the cash they have. Let's remember that Custodian Investment also had a major acquisition a couple of years ago when they acquired stake in, I think they acquired UAC Properties, stake in UPDC, and bringing that company into their fold. It didn't go well in the early stages, early few years, but I think things are a lot better now. And so now they've now moved into acquiring a merchant bank. So interesting. Insurance companies globally are usually the biggest, like some of the largest companies you can ever get now. Why is that? Because insurance companies get a lot of free cash flow, right? So they get a lot of cash flow from premiums, and the premiums that they get, they tend to invest it in assets that generate more revenues for them, and those revenues is what they often use to even pay claims. So if an insurance company is very, very well run, very strategic, with a lot of skill capabilities, they can be highly cash rich, and these guys can acquire a lot of companies, and that's what it looks like Custodian Investment has been doing for some years now. So this is a very strategic investment. Interesting to see how they're consolidating. No surprises that they're one of the biggest insurance companies in Nigeria at the moment, and so they have acquired FBN Quest Merchant Bank, by the way. So interesting stuff there. There's going to be more news coming out from this acquisition, and of course, as more news comes out, we will break it down here at Follow the Money, brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with UBA. All right, so we'll move on to the best performing pension funds. Now, why are pension funds important? Like, I like to look at pension funds because they essentially tell you how well these guys who we contribute our salaries to, part of our salaries to, mandatory, by the way, mandatory contribution of our salaries, how well they are performing on a regular basis. It's not something that we tend to track a lot, right? Because, I mean, these deductions happen whether we like it or not. They just basically deduct monies from our salaries, and we don't know whether, whether how well they are using it, or whether they're giving us the kind of returns that we want. But people don't realize that you can actually, like, change pension funds if you want. especially if you think your pension fund is not performing very well. It's very easy these days. Like, it's called a transfer, just like a football transfer. So you can just, leave the pension fund that you're currently with and go to another one that you feel is doing a lot better. And so if you wanted to check pension funds and how they've performed over the years, like I mentioned, there are websites where you can do that. And I do have one website that I tend to check. So let me just do something. So if you go to Fund 2, Fund 2 is usually like where you have like, pension funds put most of their investments in. It's not the very aggressive portfolio of investments, mostly things like treasury bills and stuff like that. But it's usually where they put most of their portfolio over the last, within a particular period. And there are several of them that do pretty well in there. And so if you go to that website I mentioned, it's called Money Counselors, you would see the best performing, pension funds. They tend to rank some of them there, and you see how well they're performing. And you can always check your own pension fund and see whether your own pension fund is doing well compared to the others. But at Nairametrics, we did something last week. We sort of like consolidated all of them for the month of July, and we wanted to check which pension fund was the best for the month of July, right? The best, that's the month of July, not year to date, because year to date will be a different dynamic. So for the month of July, Stanbic IBTC pension managers came third with 0.96% return for that month, 0.96%. So that translates to maybe less than 12%, maybe 11% per annum, right? Do you think that's good? Well, I mean, if you adjust that for inflation, that's almost negative real return, and that's what it did. In second position was Berger Pensions. So Berger Pensions did 1.04% for that month. So if you look at it over the year, analyze that, that's also just slightly over 12%. Adjust for inflation, that's also negative real return. And the best performing pension funds managers, asset managers for the month of July was Guaranty Trust pension managers. Guaranty Trust, owners of GTCO actually owns this as well. And so they came up with they returned 1.07%, which analyzes to maybe over 12% as well, very close to Berger as the best performing pension funds. So that has been, that's basically the best pension funds for the month of July. Like I said, if you wanted to look at year to date, last 3 years, 5 years, there's a website that you can go to. If you wanted to check each pension fund's analysis of how they've performed, you can check them out on Nairametrics. We have that broken down. Very important that you track your pension funds and how they're performing. So for the month of July, the best performing pension fund was Guaranty Trust Pension Managers, followed by Berger and Stanbic IBTC Pension. That has been our show for today, guys. I hope that you had a very good time listening. Of course, we do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30 on the show. And don't miss out on my money briefs. I do money briefs every week as well on YouTube. Just go to Nairametrics YouTube channel, search for money briefs. I do break down a lot of stuff. There's something that I also want to break down this week. A lot of stuff happening. I'm going to try and explain this latest fuel price increase and what it could mean for exchange rates and also for inflation, and of course your investments. I'm also going to be looking at foreign stocks and what to look out for over there. So you don't want to miss out on that money brief on our YouTube channel. That is it for this week. Do have a profitable week ahead. Goodbye.